We thank Mei Kung for joining us this morning. Mei is a stalwart member of the Greenwood County Democratic Party, and she currently serves as our second vice chair. She is an immigration attorney, as well as a local business owner running Palmetto Quilt and Fabric Company that you can find right on Montague Avenue. But first, a disclaimer. Mei will be talking about immigration policies in general, but as a licensed attorney, she cannot give you individual advice unless that someone is a client, a paid client of hers. So she can talk in generalities. She loves to answer questions and talk about politics and legal things, but she can't give you any specific advice unless you're a client, and we need to respect that. Did I catch that right, Mei?
Pretty much. Yeah. I don't know how much I love to talk about politics. Sometimes I feel like I get drawn into it despite myself anyway. But yes, thank you for inviting me to speak to our members today, Bill. I'm delighted to be able to provide some information on what's been going on the immigration front since President Biden was sworn in on January 20th. We have a lot of information, and so I'm ready to go ahead and, provide you guys with some updates.
Before we get into any immigration topics, you actually have a very interesting life journey. Are you able to sum up in a couple of sentences what brought you to Greenwood and all the different places you had to go to get here?
Well, I will tell you that I feel like I've come full circle. So I say that because I currently practice immigration law, but I am myself an immigrant. So I was born in Ghana, West Africa. I grew up in Ghana, and my family and I came to the United States when I was 13 years old. So my children are first-generation Americans. Funny enough, my husband's family has been in the United States since 1733. So here you have one parent who's very deeply rooted in American history, and then here I am, an immigrant. And so I feel very strongly about immigration issues. I'm very passionate about the United States. I'm very passionate about the Constitution. And I'm delighted to say that, finally, as an immigration attorney, we're starting to see the light back at the end of the tunnel again with our new administration.
Now, before you lived in Greenwood, you lived in Louisiana, didn't you?
I did. So I actually attended Tulane Law School. I went to New Orleans and attended Tulane, but then after that, I stayed in New Orleans and I was practicing immigration law in New Orleans. We came to Greenwood because my husband was offered the position of chair of the History and Philosophy Department at Lander University. So I'm actually also a Hurricane Katrina survivor.
Wow. As a former Northerner from New York, having come to South Carolina, at times I feel like I'm an immigrant in this area, relatively speaking. I understand an interesting fact, and we never got a chance to dive into it, but you actually had an opportunity to see and listen to Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg back in the day. You saw her speak live. What was that like?
Amazing. Amazing. And I am not ashamed to say that the evening I learned about her passing, I cried. But my husband was teaching as a professor at the University of Idaho in Moscow, Idaho. And Justice Ginsburg was a speaker at a law conference, I think it was. It was a really big deal. All of the attendees had to be vetted, and we all went through the security clearances in order to be in the audience. But she was such a dynamic speaker. It's very obvious she was such an intelligent person and such a dynamic person. And she's tiny in person. She's just a very, very tiny, petite woman, but her presence was enormous. So I was actually doing some work for the University of Idaho Law School Immigration Clinic at the time. My law practice in New Orleans had been disrupted because of Hurricane Katrina, and the University of Idaho Law School was kind enough to offer me a position as a visiting professor helping out with their immigration clinic. And so I went with other members of the immigration clinic, with other attorneys, and we were just mesmerized. She talked about international law and where the United States stood vis-a-vis other countries with regard to the rule of law. And it was just magnificent.
You know, I got a chance to watch some YouTube videos of her speaking throughout her career. And you're right, she's soft-spoken, but powerfully. And she says as much during the silent pauses in between her sentences as she does with the sentences themselves. It's just incredible.
Absolutely. And the thing is, you know, I'm sometimes the type of person that tends to ramble on and on and on, but she chooses every word she says specifically with specificity, and every word is laden with meaning. So you're absolutely right. What she doesn't say carries as much weight as what she does say.
We all try our best, but sometimes the court gets it wrong, sometimes egregiously so. One such case was from the late 1970s when school teachers were being forced out of the classroom. The minute their pregnancy showed, they were put on what was euphemistically called maternity leave, which was unpaid, and you had no guaranteed right to return. Well, the Supreme Court had a case involving our principal anti-discrimination in employment law, Title VII. It says no discrimination on the basis of sex. Came to the conclusion that discrimination on the basis of pregnancy is not discrimination on the basis of sex, because the world was divided into two kinds of people. Non-pregnant people included men as well as women. And then there were the pregnant people. They were only women, but on the basis of sex, no. There was a groundswell of opposition from both sides of the aisle. And in short order, Congress passed the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, which said, it was the soul of simplicity, discrimination on the basis of pregnancy is discrimination on the basis of sex.
Right. Now, had you been involved with Democratic politics all along, or was it just when you came to Greenwood? Or was there a specific moment where you jumped into the ring and showed up to a meeting?
Yeah, actually, it's quite interesting because I have never been involved in politics. I actually minored in international relations when I was at Cornell University getting my undergraduate degree, but never had really given very much thought to, you know, politics or, I have very passionate issues. I'm very passionate about education. I'm very passionate about immigration. But the turning point came for me. It was a couple of months before the elections in 2016. And things were heating up. It was Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. And every day we were watching the news and trying to gauge how things were going to go. And my husband made a comment to me. You know, he's a historian. And so he made a comment to me, and basically what he said was, never underestimate what people are thinking. And I said, no. Clearly at this point, there is no choice when you have somebody like Hillary Clinton and you have somebody like Donald Trump. No matter what you think of Hillary Clinton, you know, she has served the community. She has, worked for different organizations that have helped women and have helped children. And I thought to myself, surely people can see that on the world stage, she is better suited for the, role of president of the United States than Donald Trump. But I guess in my heart of hearts, I was a little afraid. And so I thought to myself, well, you know what? Maybe it's time to put your money where your mouth is. And just by happenstance, one day I was passing by the Hampton Shopping Center. I think I was going to the consignment shop or, one of the shoe shops in the mall. And I happened to see the sign outside that said Greenwood County Democratic Party. And I thought to myself, well, is this where the party has its offices? And I had my two small children with me at the time. My daughter was, I think, 3 years old, and my son was maybe 7. And I literally pulled them into the office with me. And the first person I saw coming into that office was Kathy Swindell. And she said, may I help you? And I said, is this the offices of the Greenwood County Democratic Party? And she said, yes, it is. And I said, I am here to volunteer my time. Do you need any volunteers? I would like to volunteer my time and I want to do something. And so that's how it began.
Well, that's awesome. That was, I didn't get involved in politics until after that election. And I regret not fighting the fight as strongly, because like you, I just found it inconceivable that this, literal clown would ever find his way into the most powerful seat in the world. But he did. And the month I got involved was the same month you appeared on the front page of the Index Journal as part of a protest against the draconian anti-Muslim immigration ban that was suddenly slapped up, leaving thousands of Americans stranded all over the world without recourse, without any guidance or direction. It was chaos. And that moment struck me personally. I didn't know anybody, but people who know me know my story, that there was a data scientist graduate student at Clemson who was just visiting her grandmother in Iran. And next thing you know, she wasn't allowed to come home to her boyfriend, to her dog, to her coursework. I mean, she was just caught up as an innocent victim, as thousands and thousands of others were. But you took action that same month. I just showed up to a meeting. What was that action? Who was it through? How much of that day do you remember?
You know what? I have to say that these things start to blur together for me. Sometimes the outrage that you feel is so strong that you physically have to go out and do something. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the beginning of the end. There's not going to be any stopping this. I have, even if my voice doesn't make a big difference, I have to say something, because silence is the death of democracy. And so I remember I found out about that protest outside of the courthouse, and I said, I don't care if I have to drag my children with me. And I did. I took my children with me to a lot of these events because I couldn't leave them at home due to their ages. And so I thought, you know what? Let them see what this is about. Let them experience what this is about. If you feel strongly about something, you need to say something and you need to take a stand. And so I did. I went to the courthouse that day. I had my daughter in a stroller. My son was with me. And it was definitely in protest of what President Trump was doing already so soon into, getting into the White House. This was already starting. And I could see down the road that it was not going to get any better. In fact, it was just going to get worse, based on his rhetoric and based on what he was already saying about immigrants. And, to me, it's very telling that in 2018, the mission statement for the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services was changed, and the sentence, "a nation of immigrants," was taken away. What are we if not a nation of immigrants? And how can the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services of the Department of Homeland Security take away that phrase from his mission statement? That made no sense to me at all, but it was a sign of the times. It was a sign of how the administration viewed immigration and immigrants.
That same month, the White House removed Spanish translations from their webpage. It just was absolute blatant disregard for anybody who wasn't considered your traditional white American.
Just awful. And when I think back to what President Trump did with his presidential, proclamations and executive orders, even beginning in January of 2017 with, the ban on the Muslim majority countries and African countries. And then he actually, barely a year later, in conversation with people in the White House with regard to a bipartisan immigration deal, he actually said, why do we need more immigrants from Haiti and other whole countries in Africa? What other leader of a first world country would use those kind of denigrating terms to describe, citizens of the world? And really, these are not my words. He actually said, and I quote, "Why should the U.S. accept more immigrants from Haiti and other, quote, whole countries in Africa rather than places like Norway?"
Right.
End quote.
Insane.
Yeah.
I know that one of the more immediate topics that was brought up soon after the Trump inauguration was Daca. And I came to learn, because I didn't really pay too much attention to it prior, but Daca and the DREAM Act, where the Dreamers came from, they're two different things, right?
Actually, those two things are used interchangeably.
Okay.
So DACA refers to Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. And the thought behind that is that there are a lot of undocumented people in the United States who came through not by themselves, because they were brought in by adults. and they're now in the United States. They've spent the majority of their lives in the United States. They know no other home other than the United States. And they're in school, they're contributing to our communities, they're contributing to our industries. And the thought was, during the Obama administration, when Obama tried to have immigration reform, the thought was, we should not penalize these people because an adult at the time took the initiative to bring them into the United States to escape whatever horrors they were escaping from. And we should at least acknowledge that they're here, and we should at least give them the opportunity to have employment authorization so that they can legally work. Now, we're not talking about giving them status. We're just talking about deferred action. So it's kind of what I refer to as a catch and release program. Like, you register, we know you're here, but we're not going to take steps to actually put you in removal proceedings and send you back to your country of nationality. We're going to give you work authorization, but none of that is actually status. You don't have status in the United States. So, we call them dreamers because these are people who are in the United States who were brought in by their guardians, by other, their parents, by other adults, hoping to find a better life in the United States than the situation that they left behind.
So was there a clear path laid out for somebody who would qualify as a Daca recipient to find permanent status?
Right. So that's been a topic that, when President Trump ran, he was often asked questions about, what are you going to do about the Dreamers? What are you going to do about DACA? And, his response initially was, oh, yeah. We don't have anything against DACA. We don't have anything against Dreamers. We're going to do something for them. And eventually, as we know, he didn't do anything for them. In fact, under his administration, acting director of the Department of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, tried to rescind the DACA program. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States. And the Supreme Court of the United States actually said, no. Mm-hmm. Your, attempt to rescind the DACA program is completely against the Administrative Procedures Act. You guys can't do this. In fact, we are going to say that you have to reinstate it, the program. And the thing that really gets to me is, as an immigrant and as a lawyer, I firmly believe in the rule of law. I believe it is the rule of law that separates us from countries where you have military takeovers and coups of existing governments. And so it was shocking to me. It was just like a blow to my gut when, after the Supreme Court of the United States handed down its decision and said, no, you must reinstate DACA, you must continue to accept DACA applications and process those applications, Chad Wolf said, no, stop. USCIS, stop accepting these applications, stop what you're doing, do not issue any more approvals, do not accept any of these applications that are submitted, pending my review of what's going on. So here's somebody now who thinks that he's above and beyond a ruling that has been handed down by the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Unbelievable.
Yeah. Do you have any feeling for here in Greenwood, how many Greenwood residents would qualify as a dreamer? Is it dozens? Is it hundreds? Do you have a
There are a
sense?
lot.
Yeah.
There are a lot. I think in every community, there are a lot of DACA recipients, a lot of dreamers, because when you look at the number, and we're talking 11 million, that's a lot across the United States of America. And these are people, there are requirements in place for being eligible for DACA. It's not just any old person who strolls in. There are age requirements, there are continuous presence requirements. There's the requirement that you either be in school or have graduated from high school or have obtained a GED. So there are definitely requirements. And it's really people, again, who came in as children, who went to school in the United States, who have grown up here, and they're actively participating and contributing to our communities.
It's
So
truly
I
a
would
more
say-
humane way of dealing with that situation, rather than sending them to a country where they may not even know the native language, because that's not how they were raised.
Correct. Because
Yeah.
if you're brought in as a 2-year-old, what do you remember of the place where you were born? Your whole life you've lived here in the United States. You've spoken English. You're used to, you're the American culture now. How would it benefit anybody for you to be removed from your current position at your job or, wherever it is you are, getting your education or, and then be sent back to a country that you don't even have any memories of?
Right.
And with the pandemic, we have come to the realization that a lot of the people who have Daca are actually first-line providers. They're working in the medical industry. They're working as frontline essential workers. They're the people, who are keeping our shelves stocked and who are, taking care of people who have been hospitalized. So absolutely, they contribute to our communities and to our economy and to the overall, well-being of our country.
Thank you, May. This has been a great discussion. We will save part 2 of this interview for next month, where we will dive into some of the reforms that the Biden administration has enacted to undo the damage that has been done over the past 4 years.